Good morning, Wellspring. Morning. For those of you in Zoom land, good morning to you as well. I will say that it's awful nice being here in person. Although those of you who are in Phoenix and so forth probably would have trouble making it every Sunday, but it's good to see you all. Anyway, my name is Edward Burrowbaugh. I'm part of your Sunday service team today on Sunday, February 26th. Let's talk about a few announcements. As many of you are familiar, we have early birds every Sunday morning at 9:30 via Zoom. And the link is in the weekly email, and it's also on our website. Our upcoming speakers, we have next Sunday, believe it or not, it is March. And the first Sunday I'll be speaking. And then the 12th of Sunday, we have Brian Lotman, who is a traveling monk. Remember, he was here last, I guess it was December 5th, if I recall. And in the afternoon, we're having a satsang. And for those of you who are here in person for the service, we're going to have a light luncheon in between the end of service and the satsang. And then on March 19th, I'll be speaking again. And then the 26th, we have a special guest speaker, Shirley Angel Love. It'll be, well, it won't be your debut, but you've spoken before. But anyway, it's been a little while. I also kind of want to back up and say, remember, March 12th is the start of daylight savings time, believe it or not. So let's see, there we have it, the announcement for the satsang, and we have notices over in the social hall. We also, and there's some on the tables there. I think there's still some left. And if you can think of a place you want to post it, go ahead and pick one up and post it. We'll have advertising in the newspaper and also with the other centers here in town. Anybody's welcome to come to our Sunday service, but I know some folks have their own Sunday services that they attend. They're welcome to come to the satsang in the afternoon. It's not just a Wellspring only kind of thing. It's for the entire community. The Thursday evening group is continuing to meet every Thursday at 7 p.m. Each week we have a different speaker from the HEAL Summit in 2019. I think of it as a smorgasbord of different New Thought teachings. Mostly it's related to healing, either healing yourself from a particular malady or just healing yourself from maybe less than optimal thinking. Anyway, you can speak with me or Cleona if you want link information. Coming up on Thursday, there we go. I'm in sync with you guys. Thank you. Thursday, March 19th at CSL is the Ladies New Thought Luncheon. All are welcome. Well, okay, I can't read. March 21st is what it said up there. Then I'm not in sync. All right, and lastly, I'm in sync. Our prayer team remains ready to serve and support you. You may submit a request via our webpage, or you can give it to me and I'll take it with me to prayer group. That meets on Tuesday afternoons at 4:15. And what we like to say is that if you've submitted something to be prayed with, not over, prayed with, then you might consider joining on that same time in your own private space. We know that there's no boundaries in spirit, and energy of prayer knows no limits. So as we come here today on this, what seems like a March day, we've got the wind. Many of us will be complaining about the wind, but we know that it's all part of spirit. And perhaps we can recast our judgment about wind and knowing that what it's doing, it's just blowing out the old. So if you happen to have something that's bothering you, maybe you have a growth opportunity that you're struggling with. We just know that as this wind blows, it just can take that, transform it into love and joy and peace. So today, we know that Spirit is here in this very meeting. Spirit is here flowing in through and around each and every one of us. Going out to those of you on Zoom, you are a piece and a part of the same Spirit. You're a part of the same meeting today. And we know that that energy, even your energy, will be felt by the speaker, and he will resonate with that as what he says resonates with each and every one of us. And for that, we give thanks. So now please stand if you are able for our song of joy. Thank you, and you may be seated. So please read with me our vision, our mission, and our affirmation. Our vision: to elevate spiritual consciousness in our world. Our mission: to support individual spiritual quests through celebration, study, counsel, loving fellowship, and service. And our affirmation: this month, we remind ourselves that all love begins with divine love, and there is no greater expression of love than divine love. We acknowledge that divine love is continually expressing itself through us, as us, and with us. We lift all as we extend this love to those we meet. And so it is. And now we have our guest musician returning from last week even, Sadie. Very nice. It's I think I've heard that song as a chant as well, but what more can you say? I am. Beautiful voice. Thank you. So today's reading is from Basic Ideas, Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes. It's, let's see, I forget. It's a section, chapter 4, Rebuilding Your Life, page 37. And the section I'm going to read is called Do Not Belittle Your Divine Inheritance. Remember, you are God's creation. Let me just say that Ernest Holmes writes many times that God is a he and we are children or sons and daughters. I could try to degenericize this, but maybe I'll just read his original words. Remember, you are God's creation. His life is your life. Do not belittle that heritage. It is possible that you need to cultivate the quality of love more than any of the others. Recall the words of Jesus. For one is your Father, and all ye are brethren. When you stop to really consider the truth that God is your Father and that all others are your brothers, there cannot be any foundation for antagonism toward anyone. For God is not divided against itself. This leaves the way open for loving thoughts about others and about yourself. You are a child of God, and therefore you should have a very high opinion of yourself. No foolish self-conceit, but a reverent understanding of your wondrous relationship to God. Tell yourself over and over again that the quality of love lies within you, and that it is only natural for you to be expressing it. Think first of those whom you love because of their nearness and dearness to you. Dwell upon their good qualities. Think of them by name and specify some admirable traits they possess. Kindle within your emotions a warm glow of feeling about them. Now remember that all other people are just as truly worthy of your love and are in need of it if they are to expand into finer and more beautiful ways of living. They need your love. Spend a few minutes with thoughts of love for all the world. It is sorely in need of every bit of help you can furnish, and love is its greatest need. This is not mere idle wishing. It is a definite service you can render. Your thoughts of love to mankind carry a blessing to mankind to the far corners of the globe. Do not neglect to exercise this privilege. And I think Reverend Bram is going to sort of personalize some of these words. I'm hoping anyway that I chose right on this. So today's speaker is Reverend Bram. You know, he's been here before. He's always got a great story to tell, and he always brings a spiritual into a discussion of his life, or is it the other way around? He brings his life into a discussion of the spiritual. Anyway, welcome, Bram. We're so happy to have you here.
Y'all don't want to hear me sing, so got to make sure I turn that on at the right time. We can even hear the wind outside that Edward was talking about, so it's getting a little bit on the blustery side. Well, good morning and namaste, everyone. It's so good to be with everyone here, and those of you all at home, including my beautiful wife watching from our home in Fort Lauderdale and her beautiful daughter Reagan. So welcome everybody at home. I watched Reverend Kamatara's message from a few weeks ago for the first time, and I'd never seen her before. She is energetic. Wow, what a phenomenal energy she has. And she talked about how we seriously need to lighten up. And since I'm the most uptight guy in the room most of the time, I loved her message. I mean, it was just wonderful. Really enjoyed it. And I have to ask myself, how is it that we start to take ourselves too seriously? You know, how do we allow our lives to become out of balance at times? She said, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. I thought that made a whole lot of sense. One of my teachers says, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And I've always thought there was a lot of wisdom in that as well. The amount of success that we experience in this earth school is not determined by the things that we possess, but rather by the amount of joy that we express, the amount of joy that we're here. You know, happiness is transient, the food tastes good or whatever, joy lasts a little bit longer. I think that's what we're here for, is the joy. Reverend Kamatara talked about a time when her child was in the hospital for an extended time, for extended treatment. And she said, how do you have the best time when you're going through the worst time? You know, they chose. That's the key thing. They chose to make things fun, light, laughter. They took control of their response and met the day with that. And the nurses and the doctors always loved coming into their room because they had chose to create that environment of light and love and joy. It reminds me of a story I heard one time about a woman who wasn't feeling well and finally went to see her doctor. And after a lengthy exam and many, many questions, he finally asked her, when's the last time you had a really good belly laugh? And she said, you know, it's been so long, I really don't recall. So he asked her to go home and watch her favorite sitcom and her favorite funny movies every day for a month. And she came back a month later after doing that, and she had no more symptoms. She felt so much better after that. And for all of us in this room, we're all in the same generation for the most part. All you got to do is think, I think about personally, they used to advertise the best of Johnny Carson, you know, the CDs or DVDs or they were probably VHS tapes back then. But you can't tell me that you can't watch an interview that he did with Robin Williams or Jonathan Winters and not pee your pants out, that just laughing outside. And so I asked myself, when's the last time I had a really good belly laugh? So my wife has a Tesla and I've got the app on my phone. And yesterday it said charging almost completely full. And so I just noticed it and I pulled it up on my phone and I thought, oh, here's the car. I could press this button and pop the hood. Maybe shouldn't do that. Pop this button and pop the trunk. So I just pressed the button and honked the horn. And I immediately got a text, not funny. And so I called her and I just laughed, and that just brought me such joy. She didn't think it was as funny, but I did. So, we can only attract what we're vibrating, thinking, saying, and doing. Sometimes we just need to change our vibration. So raise your hand if you're still on track, if you set a New Year resolution this year. Anyone? Excellent. When somebody asks me if I'm going to have a New Year's resolution, I just say, only think about what you want to create more of. And that's what I try to stay focused on. But I agree with Reverend Kamatara when she said playing is a powerful form of prayer. I agree with that completely. But yet, it's hard to go from that seriousness of being in the hospital with your child during a treatment all the way to joy, ecstasy. So we think about what's that midpoint? What's that midpoint between the problem that we're going through and the joy that we want to experience? And for me, I've talked about it many times, it's gratitude. Just finding anything to be grateful for, because that changes our vibration. That changes our point of attraction. And at least from a minimum point of a state of neutrality, that's when we can then pivot and focus on what we want to create more of. A few weeks ago, Edward talked about you can't teach an old dog a new trick. And he referenced the symbol of the V, symbolizing the open attitude to change or learning. And I think about it being an open to enlightenment and downloading the universal energy through our chakra, our crown chakra. But I think it's when we start to take life too seriously where that V starts to close. It's when we're not in balance and we forget to laugh and play that we start to lose this connection to spirit, and we start taking things too seriously. The Bible reminds us to be like little children. I always thought, well, what does that really mean? But, in Matthew, it says, truly, I tell you, unless you turn and become as little children, you will not experience and you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. In Mark, it also states, whoever does not accept the kingdom of God like a child will not enter it. Well, what this is referring to, this childlike, joy-filled vibration of fun and love and light, that's where we manifest. That is the kingdom of heaven. That is the kingdom of God. It's that vibration of, oh, yeah, that's it. That's what it means to me. And now I get what that scripture means. That's how I choose to understand it anyway. The last time I spoke here was back in August. And as I mentioned back then, I was all set to deliver a message on prosperity until I'd seen Edward's message from the week before. And he talked about spiritual self-care. And, I'm always interested to talk about prosperity and abundance. But as I mentioned back then, it just seems that the universe had been serving up, and unfortunately continues to serve up for me, an amazing and abundant opportunity for me to seek out more peace of mind, more life balance, and to establish better spiritual self-care in my life. And, the last few months have been very interesting, and that's about the most G-rated way I could put it in front of my friends and family and church. It's been a challenge. So if I had to title, and I suppose I do have to title my message today, it would be Spiritual Self-Care Part 2, Part Dos. Work continues to be fantastic. We are extremely busy at work, and we've got phenomenal projects coming up and just a lot going on. But as I said last August, the thing that was upsetting the apple cart back then was the fact that my daughter had called me on her second day of her sophomore year at college and said, Dad, this just isn't for me. I'm gonna step back from school for a while. And I thought, wow. So the last 6 months have been very challenging for us, much more so for me than her. But we've had some amazing breakthroughs and new understanding, and our appreciation for each other continues to grow. Am I disappointed, or was I disappointed? Do I wish that she would have finished the semester? Absolutely, yes. But the one thing I know for sure, you can't have a happy ending to an unhappy journey. So I just had to let that go. Everything I've ever done as an adult has been for the betterment of my children, or at least in my mind, to provide for them. And it's difficult for me when they don't take the path that I would like for them, because I've been around the block a few more times, as we all have for our kids. But I can't live their lives for them, and they got to figure things out on their own. And I just want them to live joy-filled, inspired lives. And my job is just to continue, both my son and my daughter, at their highest and best, whatever I envision that to be. And since the mind doesn't know whether you're remembering, experiencing, or imagining, I can go back to a time when Brenna won the city championship dozens of times swimming, or doing any number of things, seeing them at their highest and best. To me, that's one of the greatest forms of prayer. So when I think about my daughter, the truth is there's not one path. The truth is there's not only one right path. The truth is all paths can be made to be the right path. And the truth is every individual has a different path. And that different path that every individual is on is launching incrementally, and it constantly changes and can be amended. Dad has to remember that. The truth of the path, the true path, is known by source and is always guided by source, whether we see it or not. I just want my daughter to know how much I love her and support her, and that I will be there for her. So her mother and I, this coming Thursday, will be taking a big U-Haul truck full of all of her furniture and driving down to Austin and moving her into her new apartment. She's got a job. Thank you. And she will be starting to take classes again this summer. And I said, baby girl, just get a goal, just get a plan. And you know what? The plan can change. That's okay. Just get something, put feet to your prayers and start going. Just start moving. So very, very excited about that. And I know she'll continue to be blessed. But as I tell my kids, I believe that the quality of our life is directly proportional to the quality of our questions. But yet the only way that I've learned how to ask a better question is through life experience. And AFGOS, it's an acronym. I'll just call it another fun growth opportunity. My mom taught me that one a long time ago. You said growth opportunity earlier. Just realizing that an experience that teaches us, we don't have to have all the answers. You just got to learn how to ask a better question. And so I know she'll be doing quite well. Abraham reminds us that we can never get it wrong, that whatever we're attracting into our lives is based on our vibration and our thought process. So I always ask, what are we attracting? What are you attracting when you get a health diagnosis that you don't like? What are you attracting when you have challenges facing your business, negative challenges that could affect your livelihood? When faced with flat out, full-blown FEAR with capital letters, the kind of stuff that stops you in your tracks, are we reacting with anxiety, fear, or are we responding with love and light? What are we attracting? And apparently I have not fully received the benefit of that recurring life lesson, as once again, it's raised its ugly head in my life. But unlike last summer, I'm not dealing with judgment or anger or forgiveness. This time around, it's just fear. And I'm almost ashamed to admit that, but it's just fear about how things can affect my business. I was starting to run just negative what if scenarios, and they were only occasional. And I thought that I would be able to overcome them with my traditional prayer and meditation and stuff like that. But they got the best of me, and they were a little deep-seated and apparently too great to be offset with what I was doing. I wasn't sleeping well. And this has always been something I take great pride in, because I can sleep even through the difficult challenges and stuff. The faith that I have and how I practice, I can get through that. But I haven't been sleeping. And let's face it, when you don't have good sleep, there's all kinds of bad things that can happen. I was quick to anger. I was quick to be upset. I just wasn't my normal, amazing, incredible, marvelous self. So I was reminded of something that Edward was talking about last August, and you're talking about physical and spiritual self-care. So if it's true that we can attract things into our experience through thoughts and feelings, vibrations, then we can heal any imbalance, any dis-ease through different thoughts, feelings, vibrations. But then it's also true that we can prevent the imbalance and disease altogether by keeping our mind right to begin with, in the tune and in the flow of connection and enlightenment through our source, that V, keeping that V open so we can download the good stuff. But this has been my challenge, because my vibration grew so great. This fear in my mind grew so great that I began to manifest pain through my physical body. I had to stop running. I had to stop doing yoga. My left knee hurt so bad that I couldn't exercise for 6 months, but I was still able to swim. So I was able to stay in shape, whatever you call this shape. think my kids call it dad bod. And by the way, I know you all probably mentioned to me, but just on a side note, how come nobody told me how fast it was going to go in raising my kids? I feel gypped. I feel like I have been robbed. I have been flat out really upset with spirit. I have been angry with the universe that it went by so quickly. I've been out of sorts to begin with, so this wasn't a big stretch to get upset with God. I mean, I was at every folklorico practice. I was at every folklorico dance recital for Brenna. I drove them to swim practice every day at 5 o'clock in the morning. I went to every swim meet. I went to every piano recital. I went to every swim meet. I did the stuff that you're, supposed to do, whatever. I enjoyed. I think I enjoyed most of it. But where did it go? How did it go so quickly? That's what just boggles my mind. So I asked Baylor. Brenna and I are working on things, and that's great. But I asked Baylor, I said, listen, Bubba, I need something from you. And he said, Dad, what is it? I said, I want a quarterly memory at a minimum where we get together and share something. It can be just the two of us, or it can be the whole family. But I want some quality one-on-one time. And so our first memory making trip was back in January. My wife and I decided to take Baylor and his girlfriend, and we went skiing in Park City. And it was amazing. Stayed at a beautiful place, just walked right out, put on our skis, got right on the chairlift from right there. And my folks put me on skis when I was 3 years old. I've been skiing for 55 years. I raced in elementary school. I even raced on a team in college. And I'm pretty good. I know my way around the mountain. There's always somebody better. But I only tell you this because after 55 years of being on the slopes, I had never had a really bad accident. And we weren't finished with the first day of skiing, and I had an equipment failure. I had a boot blow up, and I got launched down the hill and hit my right shoulder so bad that I thought I was going to wake up and see my clavicle sticking out of my shirt. Turns out I just separated my shoulder really bad. But we were able to get through the rest of the trip, and we had a great time. But it was just a freak accident. And, and as if that wasn't enough, the following week, my vibration continued to spin on down the rabbit hole, my thought process, my fear and stuff like that. And my right knee swelled up the size of a volleyball. I was in so much pain, I couldn't walk for 3 days. The wife was really pleased with this one because we were right in the process of moving she and Reagan into a new condo. And I overdid it the day we moved in. I did all that stuff, but then I couldn't move for a couple of days. So she ended up having to pick up the slack and do some things. And needless to say, she was not pleased with me. All of this because I refused to face a situation at work, and I let my fearful thoughts get the best of me. I thought I might have to take a huge step back in what my business has been able to accomplish over the last few years and actually start over. And I thought I might even having to be start over with fewer resources and fewer people. This was my biggest fear. One night, my wife finally came to me and she said, "This is not you. You are not like this. This has never been you." And that kind of shook me. And I was so fearful that I wasn't sleeping well, so fearful that the vibration was wreaking havoc on my physical body with one physical injury after another. I'm not asking you to believe with my thought process. I know that was true for me. My friend, my ex-wife, she said, "Dude, what is going on with you?" And I said, "Oh," she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "It's my knees." She immediately quotes Lee Hay. "Oh, that's about foundation. That's about fear. That's about having your ego and this, that, and the other." And she was absolutely right, which is probably why we're divorced. But I mean, she was absolutely right. She said, "What are you afraid of?" And I finally had to decide to directly confront the fearful situation head on. And that's when I started to get relief from my pain. I faced my fear. I dealt with what could have been an extremely difficult situation. And finally, I've started to have relief in my physical body and relief from this inflicted torture that I've put on myself. So last week, I had knee surgery on my left knee, and it's probably not so much because of my thought process, but because I'm 58 years old. And after a while, just the parts don't work as much. So he sewed up the meniscus and cleaned up the patella and did all that. And that was just last week. And I called on Edward and Reverend Bonnie and Reverend Deanna to send me some good energy. And and stuff like that. I also had my wellness doctor, David Wardy, down in El Paso. He's a gift from heaven. Ask him to put my collarbone back into place. And believe me, that smarts. After you, I probably said a few things that I couldn't say in here. But anyway, he got that put back in place. And, you know, that physical manipulation, whether it's the surgery or what David's been working on, that's been great. But it's also in tandem with me making a spiritual and an energetic shift that I've been able to get relief and starting to feel normal again and you know, be liberated from the source of my own problem, which was me. Like I said a few minutes ago, just almost ashamed to admit that it's been my fear that I've been confronting lately, because I was raised better. I was raised different. You know, you fall off the horse, you get back on. You know, I can remember, it seems like yesterday, 20 years ago, I was out riding my motorcycle in the desert and had a nasty spill. And it was 5 days before Brenna was born, and kind of jogged my memory for a while. If I'd have seen any one of you, hey, guess what? We just had Brenna for about 6 months. I was saying, guess what? We just had Brenna. And so I put the motorcycle up, and I don't think I rode it for a year. And Brenna's mom came to me and she said, listen, you need to get your behind back out on that motorcycle. You need to ride it at least once, then sell it or give it away. I don't care, but I'm not living with somebody who lives in fear. So get your mind right and get back out there and take care of business. And so I appreciated that. So are we reacting to the trials and tribulations in our everyday life, or are we responding to these challenging events? As we've entered the Lenten season, do our thoughts keep us in the darkness of the tomb after the crucifixion, or are we focused on the enlightenment of the resurrection? Have we been buried by the challenge, or are we merely planted? Are we the caterpillar, or are we going to keep the faith and become the butterfly? Are we going to keep the V open? Are we going to keep the chalice open to receiving and downloading the good energy? You know, last week, Edward was talking about how he thinks selfishness gets a bad rap, and I'm glad he's not the only one that thinks that. He cited the happiness study, which showed that people who volunteered and gave of themselves were happier, and I believe in that. One of the motivating factors for me in being willing to forgive is that forgiveness is not for oneself, but rather for the other person. And to me, this is a very healthy dose of selfishness, but I also see it as self-care and self-love. And that's, believe me, that's how I started to learn how to forgive, when I thought it was more for me and not for somebody else. And we have to forgive ourselves and be willing to forgive others. You know, my friend, Reverend Chris Chenoweth, said the word forgiveness in today's language means release. It's a release inside of you, not to the other person. And we don't give up our power when we forgive, we take it back. Seeing others sets us free from resentment, anger, fear, hatred. All these are forms of attachment. And that's the releasing of those fish hooks that are in our gut. You know, you all have heard me say this many times. I will give no one power over me by forcing me to hate them. And it's allowing that poisonous bubble to bubble up inside of us in that harmful situation that still has power over us. And it's only by releasing this to the love of God that we are again set free and no longer under the control of that injustice, that perceived injustice. So I want to take just a minute or two to talk about Reverend Chris Chenoweth, a little homage, if you will. I met him in 2004 at Unity in El Paso, and he was, to this day, one of the best orators I've ever come across. No one more effective in how he would pray. He was an ordained minister. He ran Unity Village. He was like the mayor of Unity Village. In fact, Reverend Terry Lund was his assistant for a number of years there. And back in 1998, Reverend Chris didn't know how to type and didn't own a computer, but he started a daily email at www.positivechristianity.org. And as of today, there are over 2 million people that are on that list. Over the years, I could call Reverend Chris and share with him whatever trials and tribulations I was going through. And he would always say, Bram, let's pray together. And he was so good, always calling out the best in me and only envisioning the answer to our prayer and the most positive outcome. Well, back on Friday, December 9th, I got an email that Reverend Chris had made his transition. And now that kind of made sense because I'd called him a few times, probably since early last summer, and I hadn't heard back from him. And I just began to cry, and I was being selfish and thinking about I'm not going to be able to talk to him anymore. But then I read this message that he left for all of us, and I knew that he had finally escaped the physical bonds of the earth school. And, Chris never pushed any one religion on anybody. He was just, hey, go find your place and be of service, be of love and light. And he taught me how to connect a lot of biblical things that are comfortable for me, but he put them in a spiritual, enlightening way. And I always appreciated that. So, if you feel inclined, his website is that www.positivechristianity.org. And he said you can always, he has a copyright on his material. And what he meant by that is you're free to copy it. And I'd purchased things for years from him and stuff like that. And now he has set up every email, he's got stuff for ministers as well. I mean, it's soup to nuts. It's a service in a can. There it is. But I mean, every workshop that he's ever done, every CD, everything, it's all free now. And you can download it. And he set up a trust to keep these emails and stuff coming for decades to come. So we're commanded to love our neighbor as ourselves. Edward talked about that earlier. But we can't give what we don't have. So we got to have that self-love, self-care, self-love. This is what allows us to be that example, to let our light shine and to provide for others as we share that example. And any example of that success we may have is that we've tapped in, tuned in, turned on to source and the universal presence. And so why not be grateful about that? Why not be boastful about it? Just to share that so that others can see that and see the results in our effort so that we can be of service. For me, make me an instrument of your peace. Abraham says that anytime you have a physical discomfort of any kind, whether you call it emotional pain, physical pain, anything in your body, it's always means the same thing, which is I have a desire that is summoning energy, but I have a belief, I have a meme, I have something that's not allowing it to come through, and that creates resistance. And when you create resistance in anything, it creates friction, it creates heat, it creates a problem. 2 knees and a shoulder to prove of that over the last 6 months. Oh my goodness. But the solution every time is the releasing of the discomfort or pain and the seeking a better thought, seeking relief. When our prayers aren't answered, it's usually because, the forgiveness or we're not having enough self-love. But we can get rid of any problem that we're facing as soon as we focus on our faith instead of our fear, our source instead of the problem. And I can't believe that I forgot that. Oh, forgive me for that. I need to realize the love of God and the remedy for fear is that false evidence appearing real. So I will do different. I will do better. And I'm so grateful to be able to share this with you all. And so it is.
Thank you, Reverend Bram. We're going to take this to prayer now. Although I will say that the message in the revelation is a prayer in itself. What we do know is that number one is the divine source. God is all there is. That we are living, swimming, breathing in this ocean of God, this ocean of love that is continually calling us closer. Come closer, my beloved, come closer. There is nothing but love that I have for you. There is nothing but good available to you. And to the extent that we possibly can, we just need to remember that on a daily basis. We need to allow that to flow through us and operate through us. and allow that truly magnificent being that we are to shine through. And while there may be things in our life that appear to be less than godly, and less than beautiful, and less than wonderful, as Bram said, they are just areas where we have blocked the flow of the energy that's wanting to come through us. So we know that that choice is ours. The choice to accept the love that's always there, the energy and the joy and the peace that's always there is our choice. There is no place that you can go to avoid or evade that godness that you are. And so perhaps we take an instant, a moment to think of those friends and family who may be struggling with something that appears to us to be less than godly, that appears to be bringing them pain, either emotional, spiritual, or physical pain. And we know that it's not ours to correct them, but we just know that as we hold a spot for them to see that they are magnificent, they are divine beings having a human experience. As we hold that thought, we make it a little easier for them to touch that within themselves. So we give great thanks that we have this understanding, that we have this philosophy, that we live and breathe this philosophy, and this philosophy lives and breathes us as well. So, you know, as we place our affirmations and the intentions of this prayer, we place them into the law, we place them into the operation, that they are already being done. And so it is. So now we have some more special music. And while Sadie's coming up, I might add that I'm not sure what's happening with the wind and our internet connectivity. And if you've been knocked off of Zoom, there's probably nothing that I can say that you will hear. But we're hoping the recording comes up well anyway, and that will be online shortly after the beginning of this week. So here's Sadie.
Look for the good in every.
Oh, one of my favorite musicians. You did it well. Thank you, Sadie. Yeah. Jason Mraz. As you know, since we've been doing hybrid services, I guess it was COVID time or something, whatever that was. We have a link on our webpage for you to make your Sunday offering and avail yourself of that, please. And we also have a basket in the back. Again, at that time, we quit passing the basket, but there is a basket in the back for which you may put your donations. So as we acknowledge and receive our virtual, that means PayPal, and in-person gifts, we give thanks for the offering already given and those we will be receiving, because we know that giving and receiving are both part of the flow. We affirm that we are also part of that flow. So we bless these gifts and know they are multiplied throughout our community. There are a number of folks who have contributed to the production of this service. We are grateful for their service in the service. And we thank you for joining us in Zoom land today and here in the sanctuary. So please stay around in the Zoom meeting after service to visit, or join us in the social hall for some snacks and coffee if you choose. And again, apologies if our Zoom performance today was subpar, because it is pretty windy around here. We even had a minor power glitch at one point during the service. So anyway, that being said, please stand if you're able and read with me the benediction, and we will follow that by our congregational song. Spirit in the midst of us is mighty. Joy, peace, and eternal life are our true nature and flow through us into the world, and so it is.